So let's get this party started. How's my peoples? How's my Lions Den people, huh? Mighty Lions, let's go. How's my people in Oklahoma? I know you're coming. All right, we got a big show. Christine, you're at the controls.
I'm here.
Sienna's handling social media.
I just interrupted. I'm sorry. Go on.
I'd say it's about the time to roll the show.
Except that you forgot to intro our video.
I'm ready for it.
Media. Oh, you're ready? Okay.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Well, let's see if I'm ready. Nope.
There it is.
Now
Me in the other corner, though. Oh, well. We're coming to you live from Los Angeles in the shadow of LAX. It's a top-rated show in the Centinela Adobe corridor. That's right. We drop into the 7428 studio. That's Jimbo handling the controls. And Buck, he pretty much just lays there until he's got to take a crap outside. Well, it's Friday, and we let it fly with the happy hour show. So let's do this. Hey, we're all over social media. We're at sportsstoriespodcast.com. You could email us at info@sportsstoriespodcast.com. What else have we got? I know I'd like to get hit up on Twitter at SportsStoriesDL. Got to grow that account, so help me out, people. All right, come on in to our Instagram. You can find us easily there. And, of course, we're on all the platforms, including the one we're on right now, which is Facebook. We drop our podcast every Thursday as a YouTube video podcast there and wherever you listen. So we're doing what we can on content. I think we're pretty much going all week, like 5 days a week. Thursdays are podcast, but all the other nights we have some kind of activity going. Facebook Live. So from the 7428 studio, it's time to start our show.
It sure is. Now, I want to know if you want to bring Marley on or if you want to tell us about next week.
How about next week?
Okay, give me a second then.
So next week, coming up on the show next week, Monday we start our long form interviews, and that's Eric Nusbaum right there on my left, maybe your screen, right? Yep, that's Eric Nusbaum. He is the author of Stealing Home, which is a new book that's come out. Talks about the Dodgers building of the Dodger Stadium in Chavez Ravine. We also are going to start a VBC Stories Night. Yep, it's been called for, and it's going to start Tuesday night. That's going to be Wednesday's activity. We got the president and CEO of the AAU. He's also the president of ISF, which is International Sports for Scholastic, and he'll be coming on. David Warden also will be on the show. We didn't get him last week, but we did. But then we moved to Friday. Geeter's coming back. What? Yes, he is. Laker broadcaster Chris McGee will be back. And I don't know if we got a picture of him, but also joining the show Friday night will be the world famous ring announcer, Jimmy Lennon Jr. So that's a full slate of next week programming. Let's get back to tonight. Let's go from here near LAX over to the birthplace of everything that is cool, Venice. Where is Marley Rice, producer of Sports Stories Podcast?
There she is. 3, 2, 1.
Boom. Hi, Marley. Hi, Marley.
I'm still wearing my birthday hat from yesterday.
I was going to say it, but you go ahead.
Still celebrating.
Still celebrating. Yesterday was the big 3-0.
Big 3-0.
And it was a really fun virtual birthday you had.
It was a fun virtual birthday. My sister put on a great
it was terrific. You got a good family there supporting you, and then a bunch of people got in on Zoom to say hi to you.
It was awesome. Big shout out to my sister Darren. She's amazing. But I'm going to tell you about our show today.
Yeah.
So today we have a big lineup of guests happening. We're going to start with Janeen Holmes, who is the CEO. Oh, first Carlos Haro. I forgot about him. Our sponsor, Casablanca. He brings us all of our food every Friday. Janeen Holmes, she's the CEO of My Bags Foundation. She'll tell you more about that. Then we have Hal Pittman, who is the retired U.S. Navy Rear Admiral. He was just on our show yesterday. Neil Everett's coming on. He's the ESPN anchor for Sportscaster. And then lastly, we'll have Eric Nusbaum, who was on last week, but Denny told you all about him. And then we're going to have from Box Cobbler Entertainment, Ray Castro. Make sure you stay tuned to that. That's always fun and exciting. And I'm excited for this whole show. Think I got everything, right, Denny?
Yeah, I think you hit about 50% there, which is pretty good for a 30-year-old. Not bad.
I'm excited for everyone that's on the show today. I think it'll be a really good show. So make sure you stay tuned for all of our guests.
So let me keep you around while we head on down to Casablanca Restaurant, also in Venice, corner of Lincoln and Rose. When I'm talking Venice to our worldwide audience, I'm talking Venice, California, of course. So how about we bring in Carlos? Oh, yeah, Carlos, we need to see you in the picture. I like your setup this week. Solid.
How you doing, Denny? So I'm here with my daughter, Alexandria. So we're all excited. We're here at the restaurant and just enjoying your show.
Is that Rick Blaine right behind you there?
And that is Rick Blaine.
From Humphrey Bogart from the movie Casablanca. If I remember right, you have the biggest collection of Casablanca memorabilia from the movie at your restaurant. Is that right?
We have, I believe after I talked to somebody at Warner Brothers Direct, we have the second biggest collection of Casablanca memorabilia. First being Warner Brothers, because they still have a lot of the original sets and items. But overall, we are the second one. He said there's nobody else in the world has more Casablanca memorabilia, or to that say even Humphrey Bogart memorabilia.
Wow.
In the world.
Legit. We're going to cheers. But before we do that, I see that you have, you said that was Alexandra. I know her from one of our Friday night broadcasts as Agent Zero.
Yeah, this is Agent Zero. Hi.
Hello.
Hi, Alexandra. I understand you've produced even a second installment of what's going to be a trilogy of Agent Zero videos. Is that right?
Yes.
And we thought it would be a good idea to give you a bigger showcase, or rather a more appropriate showcase on our Wednesday show, which is one that goes from prep to Olympians. Would you like to do that?
Okay.
All right. So we already got installment number 1. This is just the video that you see playing right now on number 2 for Agent Zero. But
and
we'll play the audio on Wednesday for number 2. And then I hear number 3 is going to be, what was it, Carlos Bumpin'?
It's called a banger. That's what the kids like to say. So it's going to be a banger, so it's going to be one of the best. And Alexandra's been working on some different words so she can be using. So that's where we've been staying at home, trying to do some education through rap, I guess.
Yeah.
Love it. That's Venice right there. Love it. Okay, Alexandra. Well, Agent Zero, we'll make sure that you get the proper platform starting next week. Sound good?
That sounds good. Thank you.
Carlos, hang around because we better cheers, get this party started. Oh, wait. Carlos, before we cheers, Marty, before we cheers, Carlos, why don't you tell us about the specials you got going for anybody who wants to order from Casablanca?
Sure. So this week, starting on Monday, we're going to have anybody who picks up one of our fiestas, and if they call up saying they're from they saw you here at Sports Stories with Danny Lennon, we're going to throw in a margarita with our fiesta. But we're also starting to do something next Friday and Saturday, which is 7 tortillas, margarita, and green salsa for $20.
Cool.
So, but if you guys say you got it from Sports Stories, we'll do it for $16. So just make sure you mention Danny Lennon or Sports Stories, and we'll take care of that for you guys.
Right. It's $16 instead of $17?
No, instead of $20.
Oh, good. Okay. Yeah, I did that wrong. Hey, how about we cheers to get the party started, Marley?
So we got our cokes here.
Cheers, Facebook Live at 5, happy hour.
Woo!
Okay. We're off and running. Oh, Marley, one more thing. On your birthday yesterday, I noticed there was one thing.
Oh.
Turn to 3.
Now we can start talking.
Sorry. We didn't get the swipe down. Carlos, we were trying to swipe. Hey, Carlos, did you watch Wednesday's episode?
I did watch Wednesday's episode. I really got into all the prep stuff you're doing, and definitely like Ellen Parker. So
yeah,
Alexander's been watching.
Yeah, she was really good. She did a nice job, answered all the questions. And Ellen Parker also, as you know, her uncle is Dave Roberts, the manager of the Dodgers. And it was great. And you could tell like the family was really proud of Ella and piling in. And I gave her a big task to try to pass his career home runs of 26 by the time she finishes high school in softball.
I think she would have passed it this year if they would have played, but next year, probably half the season she did. If you ever seen her, she is amazing. So I don't think she'll have any trouble. I think she needs a bigger challenge than that.
Carlos, have you ever met, or Alexandra, have you ever met an admiral from the Navy?
Not yet.
Well, one of these days you guys might. So gotta say goodbye. Later. That's cold. Alexandra's going to carry this show, and I shouldn't do that to her. Carlos is one thing. All right, it's time to bring in The Admiral. Christine, let's bring in the Admiral. No, I'm sorry. We got to talk to my sister. I almost forgot.
There's a plan in front of
There
you.
is a plan in front of me, and I didn't even follow the plan, which my sister will know well of. Hi, Janeen.
Hi, Danny. You almost forgot me?
Other way. No,
What
actually,
is that all about?
I thought you were batting 2 today, but I forgot we're moving off. So you got to set this. You got to set us up.
Okay, you're talking to me about your support, which I love, for My Stuffed Bags Foundation. Danny, thank you so much. We love that you guys are going to be behind us now. It's awesome.
Yep. So I didn't properly introduce you, where I'd say we're going out to your facility, which is north of here, out in what we call like the Valley area. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your physical area where you guys do the work?
Okay, so we're in Westlake Village, California. However, we're a national foundation serving kids all across the United States, kids who've been abused, neglected, abandoned, homeless kids, kids who are going into shelters with absolutely nothing of their own. And we provide these beautiful little blue bags called My Stuffed Bags. They are filled with brand new items for these kids that are donated by people all across the United States. So we fill in the gap. These kids turn up for shelter care most of the time with nothing that belongs to them, sometimes in a dirty t-shirt and a trash bag, maybe with a couple things in it. And we're fixing that situation by providing My Stuffed Bags full of brand new belongings to comfort them, to welcome them, to give them some essential basic things they need.
It's like you said, they're thrown into such a difficult world that's so hard for them to get their mind around. And the last thing they will do when they get pulled out of a tough situation is to remember, even if they have the essentials, to bring them. And those essentials are so important to them to know that somebody's reaching out.
Yeah. Kids get what's tangible, touchable right in front of them. They don't understand a lot of things about the future. They don't know what might come to them. They only understand what's right there right now that they can hold on to. And it's very sad that they're missing those items, that most of the time they don't get to pack a nice little suitcase and bring their goodies with them.
Right.
They don't bring their teddy bears, their blankies. So we're just filling in that gap. Agencies that take in these kids are really focused on giving them a safe shelter and getting them into foster home and emergency services. And they don't have the wherewithal to, give them something as basic as a toothbrush or comforting as a teddy bear or a little stuffed animal, and most importantly, a new blankie. And so that's what we do. And our bags are filled with donated items from people all across the country. So these kids are getting the message: a lot of people care about you, and that's essential.
I know during these like stressful times when we're facing either like a recession or but especially now during this worldwide pandemic, that sometimes these kind of essential nonprofits get pushed to the side or just kind of forgotten. And so tell us a little bit about how challenging it is.
It's rough. So the thing I'm hearing all the time now is these uncertain times.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, uncertain for a lot of us, but for these kids, it's been uncertain for a long, long time. They don't know what's going to happen to them next. They might be out of their home. They might be abused. They might be homeless or neglected. Their life has been already filled with really uncertain, challenging times. And now you're taking that situation and you're multiplying it with all the uncertainty that's going on now and all of the services that they're used to receiving. And usually they can go to school and get some services. They can get fed and they can go see a counselor, and it can be noticed if they're bruised or they're in a bad shape. And so now that's much worse.
And that's taken away.
And naturally the funding flows in another direction. So what we're trying to do right now is keep everybody aware of the fact that these kids are going to suffer a lot, and they're going to suffer more over the last few months, and also give people something to do. I keep hearing people say, what can I do to help? Here's something you can do to help. You can go on our website, mystuffbags.org, and see this blanket right here. little blanket. Can you
Yep.
see it coming out of the My Stuff bag?
Yep.
So every single My Stuff bag has a blanket in it because we consider a handmade blanket to be the soul of a
Right.
My Stuff bag. And you can go on our website and you can read the directions and you can make a blanket for a child. And right now, I'm so excited about this. We have kids all across the United States earning community service hours. We have organizations, we have adults, we have people who are sitting around saying there's nothing to do, making blankets.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
so please make a blanket. You don't have to know how to sew. You just have to be able to use a pair of scissors and cut, and you'd have to tie, and that's it. Make a blanket for a kid who's going to be in horrible distress.
Nini, I'm seeing by your familiar name, Nini.
Yeah,
Nini, I'm seeing a lot of people that are coming in on the scroll right now, where they're coming in and commenting, and everybody is so touched by your organization.
Yeah.
You could just feel the love that's out there, and everybody is, really proud of what you've done, and built this foundation, and it's just so important for what's going on in the country right now, and it's so important at all times. So. Just know how proud we are of you. And
proud of you, my brother.
I know, and have fun. Now we want you to be part of this. And as you know, the other group we support is the Heroes Movement, and we also support the military in their efforts. And they're in a tough time right now too. So I've always wanted to be able to introduce you to an admiral from the Navy.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. That's the things I do. I do what I can. So I think it would be a nice time to bring in Hal Pittman. Admiral, how's it going?
Hey, how are you, Denny and Janeen? Great to meet you.
Oh, you too. Thank you.
Fantastic program that you have with the bags. Very, very cool.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, Hal, I'm sure you've seen your share of blight and frustrating times out there across the world. And it's foundations like this, I think, that fill in the gaps where, a culture or a society just can't take care of the kids.
Yeah, Denny, I will tell you this. Since I retired from the military, I've been very involved in the nonprofit world. I actually founded a couple of different nonprofits sort of in my wheelhouse, but I didn't necessarily understand all that nonprofit organizations do until I started spending more time in the United States and less overseas. And Janeen, I think it's a fantastic effort that you guys are doing. Are you receiving money from like the different sort of community support funds and things like that in this time of need, across the country?
Community support, yes. Mm-hmm. In that we have grantors that help us.
Like United Way and others like that?
More like individual grantors, Amundsen Foundation, Norris Foundation, that sort of thing. Yeah. And then we use a lot of, our items. It's highly required that they're filled with brand new items. And so we receive support from manufacturers and a lot of nonprofit foundations that supply items. Molina Foundation, Simply Fun, which is a toy organization. Here's my little card. Let me see. Happy Factory, which is an organization in Utah, and then incredible grassroots support from people all across the United States, organizations and churches and whatever. We're now in the position of having to apply for government help.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and we need it. And these kids need this support, and we need to get as much support as we can. So people donating, people doing fundraising drives, it's huge. It means a lot to us at this time. Thank you.
Nini, one of the things I always do on the show is, throw the people off when they're not ready for it.
Yeah, you better not, buddy.
I know.
I am your big sister.
When the word got out you're going to be on the show, there was several people that emailed me, said, you're not going to throw your sister off. Right. And Mom would have gave me one of these. Mom would have gave me one of those if I did. So I'm going to try to break precedent here and give you an opportunity to throw yourself off. So you could just swipe yourself up. Christine did that. Nini, I want to go down. Man, that was hilarious. Good times, huh, Admiral?
How you doing, Denny?
I'm doing good, buddy. Thank you for being on the show. I'm so proud of my sister, and she's always looked out, for the least amongst us. I remember being young and her working with, children that are at disadvantage. And she's always put that out. And I'm like, I feel a little bit of pride because I know the great service you've done.
And very much you should so. You should feel that pride. Yeah. Awesome work.
I do. Hey, cheers, pal.
So I've got my water here. It is Good Friday, and so one of my Lenten promises is giving up alcohol until Easter Sunday. So I got a couple of days to go, but cheers.
All right, fair enough. I took mine up a notch just to.
It is happy hour, so
yeah, good. I'm glad. So, how so happy. I know your service, has been so important. First of all, before I forget about my sister here, I have a chain of command question. Technically, in my chain of command, do you rank higher or my oldest sister?
I think your oldest sister does, Denny, because you definitely are support, reporting to her, I think, in more ways than one. So I wouldn't break that chain of command. Trust me.
Okay, fair enough.
You can write me off whenever you like.
My wife.
No ramifications.
Right. Christine immediately said that she ranks at the top of that.
Absolutely. That's Commander in Chief.
Thank you.
I want to talk a little bit about what's been in the news. It's really fortuitous we have you. Sure. Hear, for those, that don't or haven't been following, I'm sure most have. It was Captain Brett Crozier that was either naive or too stupid, according to whoever took over for him, right? And wrote the letter, or wrote a memo that didn't go through the proper chain of command. So could you fill us in a little bit on that story? And I'm sure you have your own views on it.
Yeah. Well, Denny, first of all, I would say that, all across the country, men and women of our armed forces, particularly the National Guard and the Reserve at home, are pitching in to help based on the governor's direction in their individual states. And they're just doing a tremendous job supporting our citizens and our country in this tough time of the COVID-19 pandemic. We had a chance to talk a little bit about this yesterday, and I'm not going to get too far down in the weeds with this, but as an individual who served almost 30 years in uniform, I have some pretty strong opinions about our Navy and the sort of the situation that's played out over the last week or so with regards to the Theodore Roosevelt and the commanding officer there. And as we discussed yesterday, my comment to you, Denny, was, there is a process and there is a system in which a commanding officer of a ship can send a protected or encrypted communication up the chain of command for an immediate response, and it goes up as high as it needs to be. And if it's a crisis or an emergency, it will get to the highest levels, and it won't put the ship in extremis where a situation like that becomes public. And the reason you don't want a situation like that to become public is because we're telling those who would do our country harm that a capital asset, an American aircraft carrier, is, essentially out of commission because of the coronavirus. And so, that's not something that you want to broadcast, right? Because it allows our enemies to kind of fill in and maybe do things that they wouldn't do otherwise. So that's not a good thing. And that's the reason why the chain of command exists. That's the reason why these secure communication channels exist. And so, communicating in that manner would have probably been the best way to do this. Now, with regards to the follow-on and the things that happened a little bit later with the acting Secretary of the Navy, again, those actions just sort of continued to play out the negativity and keep that, that bad story alive. There was a way to handle that too. That probably wasn't done as well or as gracefully as it might have been. And so, the last thing I'll leave you with on that particular issue, the current nominee in this administration for the Secretary of the Navy position is a gentleman named KJ Braithwaite. He's a good friend of mine. He was recently the ambassador to Norway. We served together very closely. As a matter of fact, we were flag officers at the same time, and we worked together. I've known KJ over 30 years, and he's a great leader. He will make a superb Secretary of the Navy. And, the Secretary of Defense, Esper, a couple of days ago called for a quick confirmation of KJ as Secretary of the Navy, and I hope that does indeed happen because, we need strong leadership, particularly in times of crisis when our country is facing issues like the coronavirus pandemic. And our military is serving on the front lines, all of our armed forces and all of our all of our National Guard and reserves at home. And so I'm hoping that we can see that leader in place before too long.
So the issue at hand was, the fact that there was some that had tested positive for the COVID-19 and some that hadn't. And it seemed like, his intentions were to, in the inappropriate chain of command way, but his intentions were to protect his guys. Is that fair to say?
Look, a commanding officer always wants to protect his or her people. The people are the ones that make the mission happen. They're the ones that make the organization. And, we owe everything to our young men and women who pick up the mantle and put on the uniform to serve. And absolutely. But there's a right way to do that. There's a right way to handle it within the chain of command to properly get resources dispatched. I'm not sure it was handled in that way in this particular instance. But you know what? Obviously, they're regardless of what's gone on. Kind of the sausage making, if you will. I suspect that those men and women aboard the ship and those who have been taken off the ship are getting the resources that they need. I certainly hope so.
Yeah, there's some, there's a little bit of disarray, but they always work it out. I do have a question, and it's
yes, sir.
Who's the captain now? All right, I just needed to say that, Hal.
Okay, Denny, you were frozen on my screen for a split second, so I sort of missed the question, but
it was the best line I had, which is I said, "Who's the captain now?" And and I was going to follow it up with, "I can handle the truth," and but we lost it there in the moment.
I am the captain now. Yeah.
Okay. Hal, one of the reasons we did, and by the way, your podcast is out and doing well now. That dropped on Thursday, and it's doing great right now. And the reason we did that, and the reason it fits into a sports stories, into our sports stories, is your sports diplomacy work. In particular, when you were part of NATO security, commander of communications, right, in the desert during and in Afghanistan. And one of the things that's just unbelievable is I think it was a Ghazi stadium.
Yes.
That previously under the Taliban served as, execution area, that you were part of the team that turned that around and returned it to sports. So could you tell us a little bit about that? It's a beautiful story.
Yeah, Denny. Well, so, in Afghanistan, we looked for ways to make connections with the Afghan people as part of the process of trying to help bring self-governance and essentially eject the rule of the Taliban, the influence of the Taliban, and the influence of extremism. And sports are a big part of Afghan life, whether it's soccer or any of the other sports. So when I served there, we worked on sports diplomacy programs. We did sports exchanges. As a matter of fact, we brought a team to Florida and Colorado Springs. In Florida, they spent some time with Amateur Athletic Union leadership. We went to several AAU events, and then we spent a little bit of time with the U.S. Olympic Committee up in Colorado Springs. We were up there for a couple of days. So these Afghan sports leaders were able to visit the United States and get a good feel for what sports could be. But we also took a team that was predominantly Amateur Athletic Union over to Kabul, and we spent a week doing sports training. One of the other efforts that we did was finding funding that we could use to help refurbish the Ghazi Olympic Stadium, and that's the big stadium in the middle of Kabul, which is the capital of Afghanistan. and it had been used essentially as an execution ground by the Taliban when they were in power. You know, the videos that you've seen, the smuggled videos where they would do beheadings and whatnot, you know, on the field there.
Yeah.
We basically put down new turf. We brought in new lighting. We helped them refurbish that stadium and bring it back to life and restore it for the purpose that it was originally used for sports, the thing that bring people together instead of, you know, the division that was created by extremism and by the Taliban, you know, in the 90s. And you know, we had a wonderful sports diplomacy program there. The friends that I made in Afghanistan were absolutely fabulous. You've mentioned it also. We had a number of AAU officials that had the opportunity to go over and experience that firsthand, whether they were doing, you know, sports training in soccer or taekwondo or basketball and a variety of other sports. We really, really enjoyed that. But the most important thing was we made a difference. We trained the trainers. We provided athletic training for coaches that would interact with Afghan youth, both girls and boys. And it was just a fantastic program. And it's something that I'm really, really pleased to have been a part of.
And it's a beautiful thing about sports that can create those pathways
Absolutely.
and improve the lives of people. You know, we went out and did the recording for the podcast with your son, Evan Pittman, the world's strongest violinist, and Rebecca, your wife, and they couldn't have been nicer to us when we came out and did that. So best of them. But while we got a chance, I want to bring in an anchor from ESPN. He's a big time supporter of the military. So let's bring in Neil Everett. Where are you, Neil Everett?
He's coming.
Is he coming? Is he
3,
ready?
2, and 1.
And 1. Hi, Neil.
How's it? I've been called a rear end, but I've never talked to a rear admiral. So this is a big moment.
I knew you'd bring something solid.
How's it?
How's it? Oh, you want? All right. Hey, I got a question for you. I got a couple questions for you, Admiral, if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
One, I want to know what are, because we've got this nonprofit Heroes movement, and listen, we are hand to mouth right now. What are some of the biggest lessons you've learned that you could share that have helped you in the nonprofit world? Because I know you were, I know you did sports and wellness nonprofit with the in Iowa with the Special Olympics,
Right.
and we need some juice, and we need to up our game.
So I would say there's a couple of things. Number one that you can probably help with is visibility, because the greater the visibility of the organization, the more people learn about the mission, the more people that have influence or resources will say, God, I love that idea. How can I get involved? How can I donate, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so that's one of it, just helping create the visibility. And the other is closely related to that. That's enrolling people, that have that sort of influence, whether it's on a corporate level or philanthropy level. I just really believe that the greater the support base, the more people are involved, the more voices you're going to be able to get your story out there, and the organization is going to, even in tough times. Right now is a challenging time for our country. People are losing jobs. The economy is contracting a bit. But even in tough times, if you have a widespread influence and a lot of participants, you can still compete to bring in resources to fund that important work on a nonprofit level.
This is your big shot tonight, Neil. We're giving you the platform you need.
I'm sweating. I got so many questions. My other question is, because you entered the Navy as a journalist.
Yes.
What's your opinion of journalism as you see it as a medium right now?
Sure. So, and I'm sure that you see this every single day. It's more about how do you drive people to the web, to look at, what you're doing, more clicks, a little bit more sensational, et cetera, et cetera. I still believe in journalism with all my heart. I am a consumer of journalism. I read the major newspapers, which is largely devoid of sports content these days, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, every day I look at the Wall Street Journal, I look at the New York Times, I look at our own Arizona Republic here in Phoenix. I go to CNN.com. I'm an ESPN Plus subscriber, although the kind of content I'm looking for is not necessarily there right now. But that's because we're in a most unique time in the history of our country. So, but I think, look, I'm going to be really honest, really brutally honest, Neil. I think that journalists are doing okay. I think there's always been a group of political figures or a certain political bent that will, attack transparency. But I believe that the majority of journalists are still out to be transparent and deliver the truth and ensure the American people know what's going on. And so I'm a believer. I really am.
Hal, I have one question. Hal, in the Navy, what's it mean when they say anchors away?
So,
bam, right? Am I right?
Oh,
that was good business right there.
Whoa!
I know. How am I going to make a name for myself if I don't pull off those kind of things?
Damn.
Yeah. Well, that's you're in my captain's.
You are a braver man than me, Denny.
I know. I'm not going to be in Arizona for a while, so I'll be all right.
God, I had another 15 minutes with the Admiral already. You're going to regret that when you realize what a dead end you ran into with me.
Oh, Neil. Good days. Good days ahead.
First of all, let's toast Carlos.
Yes, let's toast Carlos.
Yeah.
Beautiful. That's the wife said.
And a shout out to your sister and what she's doing. I mean, come on. That's
good stuff, right?
That's real stuff. That's real stuff there. We have my wife and I have familiarity with the foster system in Oregon and in California and have been involved. And so God bless her.
Yeah, I've always been really proud of her. And and I'm just glad that it was my wife that threw her off the show and not me.
Oh, dude, you got to answer the Admiral. I mean,
He's on there.
So you're a kid born in Spokane, and
I was born in Portland. I grew up in Spokane.
And grew up in Spokane, but I was reading up a little bit on your football career there, playing at Lewis and Clark High School, huh?
Oh, well, look at that. No gray hair. What happened? Tigers.
Yeah.
Tigers.
What's up with the Tiger thing? Because look, Lewis and Clark did some significant things, and you couldn't go with Pathfinders, anything along these lines.
You know what's interesting, Denny, is I went to Sacagawea Junior High, and of course Sacagawea was the leader of the Lewis and Clark expedition. They would have been eaten by tigers somewhere in Oregon had they not had Sacagawea.
You more of a Meriwether Lewis kind of guy or a William Clark kind of guy?
I think William Clark. Meriwether is a little bit of a tougher name to get behind.
I understand you were all league selection or all city selection at offensive guard in football.
One newspaper at offensive guard and the other paper at nose guard because you had to put it both ways. So listen, I had a lot of anger issues back then. So, I had a lot of pent up frustration. So
how did you had a few schools you had to play against? Like we were running them up there. The Central High School.
North Central had Ryan Sandberg as its quarterback.
Oh, sick.
Chino Park had Mark Rippon as its quarterback.
Mark Rippon was the quarterback the day my son was born. He won Super Bowl MVP.
I've known Mark since we were in third grade. My dad coached him in basketball.
Wow, I got to get a picture with my son and him because I wasn't sure how my son and I would get along when he decided to be birthed on the Super Bowl.
Well, listen, you get your boy up to Spokane, and we'll take care of that picture, no problem.
So you jumped from there to Oregon, did you?
Yeah, I did. My grandpa was on the 1920 Oregon Rose Bowl team. My mom went to Oregon. My dad went to Oregon. It was in the cards that I go to Oregon.
What and you had a good time there. I'm sure you caught the fever for college athletics.
Yeah, I majored in journalism. That's why it was interesting talking to the Admiral about his thoughts on journalism right now as it stands. I majored in journalism, and then I moved to Hawaii for 15 years, and then I got hired by ESPN, and here we are now.
When you were in Hawaii, you were an athletic administrator at what, Hawaii Pacific or something like that?
Yeah, I was what they call a sports information director. So that's basically your PR guy for your sports department. And so that was, I took my journalism degree. I could write a little bit. So I wrote about all the games and the school and all that, and tried to get publicity in the local televisions and local papers for a small NAIA school.
Little shout out to KITV. Was it KITV? Is that right?
Yeah, I was at KITV, and I got fired at KITV, and and then I went to KGMB, and then I went to another station, and I got fired, and I went back to KGMB.
Wow.
I went to ESPN. So how do they think those guys who fired me at those little podunk Hawaii stations feel now? Huh?
That's right. That's right. Tell me a little bit about what's really fun.
Are you close to Carlos yet?
Yeah. Cheers. Toast to Carlos. How about your style is a lot of fun. So maybe I'll ask you a few questions. You just tell me a little bit about it. You like to refer to a certain time zone all the time. Okay.
Yeah, Hawaii.
Yeah, which is fun. And how about respect the whack?
Well, you got to respect the whack. I mean, if you don't, who's going to?
And who's the most isn't Hawaii the most gambled on team or something because they play the latest and everybody's trying to
you're chasing. I mean, if you're a gambler, you're chasing. Okay.
One tourist destination for Hawaiians.
Bartender Jack.
Bartender Jack. I just came up with that one night, and everybody seemed to like it. And I think we were weaned on Jack Daniels, people of my generation, so it made sense. And it's interesting because I always thought I would get like an endorsement deal with Jack Daniels, and so they sent me a foam finger once, and I'm like, really? That's it?
That's all.
I did bartender's Maker's Mark for Mark Teixeira when he hit a home run, and Maker's Mark sent me a bottle with my face engraved in the bottle. Wow. I did bartender Jose for Jose Bautista when he was hitting all the home runs, and Jose Cuervo sent me so many bottles of booze. I was giving bottles of booze away. Jack Daniels sends me a foam finger, and I'm thinking about giving them a foam finger for that.
All right, tell me about your love of the movie Big Lebowski. Like so many of us love it because I love how it's set in LA, so it has a certain resonance with where you broadcast from.
Well, I just think it's anybody who's called the dude or calls himself the dude. Right there, you're standing out. You've got a bigger set than the rest of us if you can just call yourself that. And then you throw in John Goodman's character and Steve Buscemi's character, and I just think the movie resonates to this day. And I got to actually interview Jeff Bridges on the show, and so that was super cool because he appears to be that man in real life. Yeah, he appears to be the dude in real life. So it was really enjoyable to get to talk to him.
That's pretty cool. You Grateful Dead or Fish? Which one you going with? Yeah. Great. The Fish is for the younger people. I mean, Fish is like younger deadheads, I guess. It was I was the one I liked that I thought went deep was Cougar Gold, because now you're talking about something specific on the campus of Washington State, right?
Absolutely. And anybody out there who has never had Cougar Gold cheese, it's like seeing God. Okay. So you go dial up Washington State University Creamery, and they can ship the Cougar Gold to your home. And listen, you know what? It may cure coronavirus.
U of O, Gonzaga, Washington State, if they're in let's say a pool and they got to play one and somebody's got to come out standing tall, who are you going with?
Well, Washington State's the first one out. That was easy. And then Gonzaga and Oregon, you know what? I mean, it's why have to pick among the things you love the most? So and just celebrate the fact that you've got more than one thing to love. So that's how I'll answer that question.
What have you been doing the last few coronavirus weeks, pal?
Well, you know what? I have not been on the air for a month. It's back night. The last day I was on, I think it was March 11th, maybe March 12th. It was a Thursday.
Yep.
Rudy Gobert tested positive.
Mm-hmm.
I had the Friday off, so we reported on that all night, and you knew like, whoa, this is heavy, man. And the Cougar Gold, joke was a joke. But it was just like, wow, what's going on? What is going to go on here? On Friday, I was supposed to go to Las Vegas for the Pac-12 tournament.
Yeah.
And then obviously that got canceled Thursday morning. And then I happened to have Monday off, and after Monday they shut down LA, and we haven't been up since. So this is scary times, man. This is scary. And Heroes Movement, which I'm involved in right there. I know Mike.
Yeah, that's good.
I'm wearing the uniform, Mike. Heroes Movement, what we're doing, we don't have any gyms open to serve our vets. So this is a tough time for our vets because they've got nowhere to go and they like structure. And we had offered structure, and now we don't have that structure. And in February, we had 321 vets who did over 1,700 sessions. So that means each vet is going like 6 times a month, and so you need that. And it's we have our structure in our daily lives that we don't have anymore. And so you've got to regroup, and you've got to figure out what you're going to do. But for some of the disenfranchised, it's like, hey man, we're thinking about you, and we want to be there to support you, but we're shut down. Our gyms are shut down because without our gyms, we can't be there for our vets.
No doubt. Mike McKay was on the show last week, and towards the end before I threw him off, he said something that was so sweet. I just talked about reaching out to a vet because they're dealing sometimes with things, but then they're alone now. And they're quarantined, and it's time to reach out. And it was really nice.
No, absolutely, man. I mean, the statistics say what they say, about the hardship that veterans are undergoing. And so we want any vets that are watching right now to know that, hey, man, we're thinking about you, and try and do the program, the programs that we've taught you through Heroes Movement at our gyms. You try and get a couple buddies together and do your social distancing. No resistance to social distance, but you can still work out and get these things done. And hopefully we'll be back and supporting you in no time. We're supporting you with our hearts right now, but hopefully we'll be able to support you physically in the near future.
No doubt. And hopefully in the near future we get you back on the air because we miss you up there. Yeah, it's fun. Hopefully we get our Dodgers back, which is, as you'll notice, a very smooth way of me segueing in our next guest.
I'm going to get swiped right now. I can't wait.
No, not yet. Not yet. You're in conversation with Eric, then it'll hit. Last week, I swiped out Eric, our author, when I asked him about his students. I said something to him. I said, Eric, so I understand you got a 4 and a 2-year-old, and that's when I let him go.
It was brutal.
Hey Eric, I was just reading your story, and I'm the one of the 3 people that still get the newspaper delivered, and the LA Times, they had a great article on you, Stadium's tragic origin story, talking about your book. And so I read the article, and I wanted to ask you, how has researching and writing this book affected your Dodger fandom?
I don't think it's really affected it as much as I would have guessed. Like, I'm a Dodger fan in the way that you're a Ducks fan, and you might have an issue with something that Oregon does. And I have a lot of issues with Oregon too, because I'm a Husky. But I
swipe me, Danny.
Swipe him. But I've learned how to deal and accept it. And I think as a journalist, you think about things, you learn about them, and that just doesn't really change the way you feel. It just sort of informs you a little bit more. You have a little bit more perspective on it.
Well, I'm excited to read the book, man. It was a great, you got the top half of the page on the book review that that you beat Woody Allen.
I know, he was underneath me. I love that.
Exactly. Yeah, Woody.
That's where it should be. Good time has passed.
You got any experience with baseball there, Neil? Man, you saw that one coming, right?
Oh yeah, right away.
Saw that coming
right away.
He's a rookie on the show. What are you gonna do? And I like when you can see it was turning, and then okay. All right. So first, let me just say that let's actually fill us in on the kids. That was rude of me last week.
I'm about to say.
I'm worried that you're going to swipe me off now again.
We
We just started. I know you have 10 more minutes to fill.
because we got some work to do. So
You have a secret guest lined up behind me. My kids are 4 and 2, almost 3 and almost 5. Clay and Marco, 2 boys. They're in the backyard playing right now. It's a beautiful day, and they're the best. We're in Tacoma, Washington, by the way, to give you a sense. A little bit further away than Culver City, where I used to be.
We have some high level aerial shot right there going into Tacoma. The book we're talking about is right here, everybody. It's called Stealing Home, and it's a fascinating book because some of us, as Neil mentioned, know the story, but we know of the story, and we don't really know all of the story. And so we dug in a little bit last week. I think what we talked about last week, Eric, was we talked about like the Truman administration, and they had urban planning. And we also talked about you getting a visit from a guy, Fred Wilkinson, who told you a little bit about this while you're still in Culver City, and the Red Scare and how communism kind of got intertwined. And all of that is so fascinating in and of itself, but we've barely even scratched the surface.
Yeah, it's a story where you would think it's like about a baseball stadium being built. It would be a pretty simple book, but it's really not. It kind of goes back to the origins of baseball, the origins of LA as a city, and issues of, politics and the Red Scare, immigration, racism, big subjects.
Absolutely. We'll get a chance to kind of dive into a lot of that on Monday because really, after I saw that you wrote the book and I reached out to you, we internally said, let's just launch another Monday Facebook Live where it's long form. And those that are interested in the subject matter can come and know that they're in for, like an hour where we'll discuss all of this. And that's going to be really cool. I think I'm looking forward to that because the deeper I get into the book, the more I'm just like blown away. So I was hoping we could hit a couple of things tonight. One of which is how this kind of ties into the Mexican-American War, 1846 to 48 time. And Santa Anna's leg. That one.
Sure.
Good time right there.
I wish the Admiral was still here. I could ask him about, amphibious landings in Mexico in the 1840s. I feel like he would have had something to say about it.
He would.
But I will. So one of the things I talk about in the book is manifest destiny and the idea of, that America was entitled to all the land on the West Coast, and many people believed it was entitled to really all of Mexico too. And one of the kind of early myths about how baseball came to Mexico was tied up in that. The myth is that during the Mexican-American War, after the U.S. invaded in Veracruz and landed and was marching to Mexico City, that there was a battle in this town called Jalapa. And after the battle, the famous Mexican general Santa Anna retreated and left his prosthetic leg on the battlefield. Right. And that American troops led by Abner Doubleday, who was the inventor of baseball, but he's really not. He had nothing to do with baseball in real life, used that leg as a bat for the first game. And that story got passed down as truth in like travel guides and stuff for decades. And it became sort of like a folklore, but people thought it was real.
Yeah.
And it's just sort of says a lot about how the game grew and the U.S.-Mexico relationship at that time.
So it was, now years later, it's Albert Spalding who needs to justify his sale of sporting goods and wants to claim the game as American. That falls back on that myth or that folklore, so to speak?
Yeah, exactly. So he was a sporting goods tycoon. He'd been a pitcher in like the early days of pro baseball. Right. And he started the Spalding Company, which now we think of probably more with basketball than baseball.
Sure.
But he was really like the first big baseball kind of proselytizer, like preaching the gospel of baseball to America and all over the world. He brought players to like Egypt to play in front of the pyramids in the 1800s. I mean, he was very serious about spreading baseball. And he knew that if he spread baseball and made it more popular, he, as the leading seller of baseball merchandise, would benefit. And one of the things he did was he created this fake commission called the Mills Commission to, quote unquote, discover the original inventor of the sport.
Yeah.
And somebody really sneaky just went behind you.
Wait. She's like Black Ops.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I need to see her. And
Yeah.
so the commission, crowned, they discovered, quote unquote, that Abner Doubleday was the inventor of baseball, but
Right.
he was not. It was really just kind of a convenient answer to help them sell more bats.
So also intertwined in that whole story is that
Theosophy. Yeah. So
Yeah,
Spalding,
yeah.
Spalding was married to this woman who was in, basically you call it a cult now, like a mystical religion called Theosophy, and they had a campus in San Diego where they lived. They lived at Point Nazarene University is there now, and it was this crazy, like, beautiful compound overlooking the water with all these domes and lights, and they were always being criticized for doing weird stuff. And Doubleday, after he left the military, and he was a war hero in the Civil War too, became a theosophist. So for them, it was like, we can kill two birds with one stone. This guy is not only a theosophist, but he's a war hero and he's dead. So we'll just say he was the inventor of baseball. It'll be good PR for Theosophy, and it'll be good to, have a war hero who invented baseball, and we can just sell that story. And it's marketing. You do marketing. It worked.
Yeah. It is. It's crazy. So we definitely want to save a little room for conversation on Monday. And given this is your second time on the show, how would you like to be swiped off?
I'd like to be swiped off when I'm least expecting it. Now.
Darn it. He got us. All right. First guy.
Yeah,
Tracy was trying to pull the figure. So, yeah, hopefully you guys are interested. That story is so legit, and Eric's all over it. And I really hope you'll come in Monday, because Monday we can, dive into a little bit more. I highly suggest you dive into the book, because even though we've talked a lot about it the last 2 weeks, and we'll talk a lot about on Monday, you can't cover all of it. It's really fascinating to see how everything brands together between what the city of LA had, what the federal government laid on top of that. And you think that Walter O'Malley is at fault here, but you really see that there's multiple forces that come into play that make for the displacement of those in Chavez Ravine and the building of that stadium. I forgot to bring up that, and really that's on my fault, is that actually today marks, in 1962, April 10 was opening day at Dodger Stadium. But I'm going to save that for Monday, because he and I are going to talk a little bit about that game and the game subsequent. Okay, I think we've had a pretty good show. When you consider my sister, solidified her part of this show. People are supporting that program. Go Janeen and my stuffed bags. Also, the Admiral. I mean, look, we're in really difficult times right now, and the role of the military is really important to us at these times. And it was nice to have Admiral Pittman on. He's a great guy, and we look forward to having him on the show whenever we need a little bit more of that. Okay, so thank you to Neil Everett. That's pretty cool. I got Neil Everett asking questions on the show, and I'm glad we can give him the platform he needs to take it up a notch. And finally, of course, Eric, and we'll get to see more of him. Hey, remember, next week is going to be crazy good, because the VBC show, the Venice Backyard Championships, that starts on Tuesday. That'll be both some of the family and also some guests from the outside that'll come in and talk about that legendary show Tuesday after Tuesday, so we can break that down. Wednesday, I just got word on my on a text that came in, joining Dr. Roger Gowdy, who is the CEO and president of the AAU, as well as the president of International Scholastic Sports, the ISF, will be Catherine Plummer. That's right, who I've argued in my blog is the greatest collegiate volleyball player ever. Catherine Plummer, who I think is going to be an absolute star. Last year won the Sullivan Award. Yeah, Catherine Plummer will be on the show next Wednesday. And David Warden, who had issues on the audio side of last Wednesday's show, will be back with all audio fixed. So that show is going to be really good. David Warden is an expert on the Olympics. He's AP award-winning writer. He's also the columnist, or rather a submitting writer for the Los Angeles Times on the Olympic Games. So that's all. That's loaded for next week. Okay. I think, finally, got to announce, Sports Stories is doing business, and we've signed a multi-year agreement for advertising and entertainment with Box Cobbler Entertainment. Okay. Ray Castro, acting president of Box Cobbler Entertainment. Take it away.
Just turn on the heater, burn out my hot Papa the Sailor Man. See you next week, people.
Kick it out, Book.
Yeah, kick it out. Kick it out. Yeah, buddy. Way to kick it out. Good job.